Okay, so welcome back, guys, and let's continue with this tutorial series where we are learning a little bit about Python. So just to cap off what we just did, we learned how to put something into our method or into our definition here, where we set the side, the lim, the type. So that's all good, but something that we want to learn now is how do we get something back, because we have just we just want to make sure that we can get some info out of our definition, so we can actually use this definition inside another definition. So if I, for instance, have something called diff kl module make ik arm. So let's say that I'm calling my kl module here. Let's see, control, I think I called it, so you can see it actually helps me because it already knows. So if I go here, you can say module, and you see like it starts picking up where my definitions are and guessing what it is that I have. So I'm just gonna hit tab to go to that. Oh, and if any of you were wondering how I zoomed in and out, I hold down control and scroll. That's how I make the text bigger and smaller. So right now, I'm just gonna call this function to show you guys how this works. So we have to give it a side, so let's call that L, and we have to give it a limb, which is an arm, or we can call it a leg or whatever, and we don't need to specify that it's a type, because we know that we're going to build an IK arm from our definition here. So let's try and do that, and then let's see what happens when we call this function. So if I go back into Maya here, I want to call a new function, because I'm no longer so I'm no longer want to call this. I don't need to call only making a control. I want to make that control inside my make an IK arm. So at some point we need to give this one some info that we want to pass into it. Of course we want to do the side and the arm again, but the first thing we want to do is create an IK control and all that other stuff. So to go back into Maya, I just want to show you guys how to throw something back into another module. So the first thing we can do is we gotta say like return something. So right now I'm just returning to finish my definition, and I want to be able to say I put something into this function. We did that here, and I want to get something out. And what do I want to get out of it as soon as I call this function? So if I say return underneath my circle here instead, so I say return, you can see that turns pink, and then I say sear, and I'm just going to escape that and control S that. So if I go back into Maya now, and let's try and still run this code. Obviously we're gonna get this here, and it's called the correct name, so let's try and undo that. And now, since I created a let's look at that. So since it's Facebook. So since I created like I'm just quickly gonna turn this one off, because that is really annoying. So now I can tap between the two. So so if I'm returning my sear, we know that I'm creating a circle, and we know about return values. So we know that when I have a command called circle, it returned to me, what was that? It returned to me a transform node and a shape node. So let's see that happen. So if I say I want to return the sear values, which we know is a list of two items, the shape and the transform. So if I go in here, how do I get that out? I'm gonna say control equal, or we can say ctrl, so we don't clash with any names. So ctrl, and we actually already imported our module as ctrl, so naming that again is probably not a good idea. So let's call it yeah, this is when you clash a little bit. We could have called this m control or something else, so we know that it's a module, and I'm calling it a module control. So let's try and do that, m, and then capitalize C, so mctrl. So if we copy that down here, and now I'm just gonna import my module again, and this time I'm calling it mctrl, and this time I want to reload the mctrl as well, so that works. And now I'm gonna call my new mctrl. So we go into the file, and inside the file we're calling this module. Everybody gets that now. So we go into this file, sorry, this one here, mkl control. We go into that. Let's try and delete that. And then we call this function here, the kl module control function, which is this one, right? Oh, this one, yeah. We go into the file, call this module. And now, because we have a return value, we have to have something to throw that into, which we're going to be an equal. So let's try and go here call that function, and then let's see what it actually gives us back. So let's try and print TTRL. And you can see this now holds a list of these two objects. And that's awesome. So one thing that I don't really need is my shape node right now. I can always get that later. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, like, when you make this thing, I only want to have the first object. And the first object is the transform node, which is this one I'm selecting here, right? So if I go back now and I save this again, I've told it to only give me the first object in that item and not give me a list, but just one item. So you can see here, if I do this whole thing again, so I kill this and then I run this again, you can see I'm printing it and it gives me an L control. Sorry, if I run it and it's just a string, it's gonna print it automatically actually. So if I delete this, just delete this one, you can see it creates it. And if I double click on this one now, I don't need to print it. You can see like it gives me this value. Great. So now we have something returned, which is awesome. So let's try and go back in here and triple click on this line so we get the whole thing, and I'm just going to call that line up here. And then I'm going to take this, instead of calling this function, I want to call this function. So inside of this function, or inside of this definition here, sorry, I call them definition and function, it's the same thing. A function is in Mel, and a definition is in Python, and function can also be a C++ and all this stuff. So function and definition is the same. So inside this definition of function called KL make IK arm, I'm calling my make controller, because if I want to make the whole arm, the whole IK arm, when everything is done, I need to make a controller at some point. So basically how you have to look at it is that you have let's try and do like this to explain what I'm doing here. So in one module I have a diff kl make control, so I'm making control, and then I want a def kl module make or ik or make ik, and right now I'm just gonna return. So I'm not doing anything with this now, but if I don't write anything in here, I can also go pass. If I don't write anything in here, Maya will call an error and say that this one is empty and there's something wrong. I can't figure out what's going on. So you always have to make sure that you fill something in. But what you'll do is you have like a few functions or definitions that do different things, and then you have like one overall definition that sort of calls upon the other. So in this case, I want to make an IK arm, and that IK arm might do and make an IK out of some skeleton we're gonna give it, and it need a controller. Maybe it needs an orient group that we can call from another module. But in this case, I'm just gonna say make IK, and then I have like make the whole arm here. So the next thing we're gonna do now is try and just run this function and see if we can print out this item. So if I inside this function say print control, and I hit save, and then we're gonna call this function instead. So instead of calling that, I'm still going into the same file, but I need a different function, and that function doesn't take any information. So if I delete this one now and I go, sorry, so it says mcontrol is not defined. Okay, so oh sorry, that's something else. So here we go, mcontrol. Okay. Oh, okay, so in this case I actually don't need this because I'm already inside the file, so now I can just call the function. If you're working with classes, you would have to use probably a self argument if this is further down, but we're not, so don't worry about that. But there might be some of you who's wondering. But for now, we can just call it like this. So if I just say call this function up here, I call this function down here that we created, which is our controller, call our controller up here. So and return me the circular controller. So I get back whatever control I'm making. So let's go in here and try and run that. And you can see, oh, because I'm printing it again. I don't need to print that. But you can see. I'm calling the make IK arm. I'm not calling the make controller, but inside the make IK arm, I'm running the make controller. So let's try and continue. Actually, I think I'm gonna stop here and I continue to the next one. So this was a little bit about how we can return values and use them inside other functions. I think that's a pretty good length of a return value calls. And next time we're gonna try and fill something into the make IK, and then we're gonna call this function inside here and see if we can put the controller on top of the IK handle that we're gonna go return down here. So yeah, let's do that. So I'm gonna save here and I'll see you in the next lecture. So it's just gonna ask me if I want to buy it, and I'm not sure yet. So let's save. And I'll see you in the next lecture.